Hi, I'm intimidated by the size of the crowd that made it in through the horrible weather here. I'll start by saying that I screwed up. There's an error in here. You're going to see what it is. I'm going to be humiliated on the internet, but at least everyone will have a good laugh. Tonight we have the big picture, as always, planets, the moon, weird galaxies. That's a typo for one. Not talking about any galaxies this month. I changed my mind and went on to open clusters. Comets and meteors, variable stars, double stars. I don't know why I bothered doing that because Blake isn't here. And whatever's coming up in spaceflight. So the big picture, this is what the sky is looking like tonight in the evening. Looking off to the west, we see what's setting. We've got Mars, we've got Neptune and Uranus. Neptune is pretty much hopeless at this point. Eris, if you're interested in some deep sky, very deep photography. I doubt anybody here has anything that can see it with a naked eye. We got all our popular winter constellations, Orion and Taurus, and all the spectacular winter objects that we like to show off to people, the people who can stand the minus 30 degree weather. In the morning, this is what the sky's looking like just before the next meeting, late February. We're going to have the summer constellations start making their first appearances, Scorpius and Sagittarius. We've got a good lineup of planets showing up there. A few minor comets are showing up in this display, and we've got a couple of the minor planets up there in Botes and Coma Berenices. The nights are getting shorter. That's good for us, or it's good for people who like sunlight. Bad for us. Tonight, twilight ends at 6:46, starts again at 5:41 in the morning, so that's a good long night for long exposures if you've got your photography gear set up. I'm assuming that's the only people who are going to be doing any observing in weather like this. I can't see anybody stepping out for visual observing in the conditions we've got. By the end of this meeting period, the nights will be significantly shorter. Twilight ends at 7:22 and starts at 5:03 in the morning. So if you've got long exposures to take, now's your time for it. Got the new moon on February 4th, moon at apogee on the 5th, perigee on the 19th. The moon is occulting Saturn and then Pluto on February 2nd. We're not going to see that from here. You're going to need to be somewhere on the other side of the world to see that. But I've included in there just in case someone's traveling or someone is watching this on the internet and will have a chance to see it, or if you just want to play around with your planetarium software and fake it for yourself. Mercury's greatest eastern elongation on February 27th, which means the highest point you're going to see it in the evening sky. Yes, it is the evening sky. I got that one wrong. February 18th, Venus and Saturn are going to pass within just over a degree of each other. That should be a really spectacular photo opportunity. Hopefully the weather will give us a chance. It's going to be early in the morning though, so if you're going to prepare for that, you'll want to wake up very early in the cold weather. The moon, we have a new moon February 4th, first quarter on the 12th. We have a supermoon on February 19th. We have a conflation of both the full moon and the closest approach. I personally don't really care much about supermoons, but what I have found is people who don't know a lot about astronomy do care. They read about supermoons in the newspaper and they call me up and ask me if it's true. And I like to take that as an opportunity to do a little science education, a bit of outreach, tell them to go out and look for themselves. So although the supermoon is a foolish bit of hype from our point of view, it's a nice way to sell astronomy to the public. Last quarter on the 26th, just before the meeting. And if you're the kind of person who likes looking for Lunar X's, 9/13 on the 11th. And I've included the picture of the Lunar X for people who were new in the meeting tonight, but it looks like it's just the hardcore old guard who've shown up in the weather tonight. Planets, Mercury and Venus. Mercury comes out in the evening. It's probably the year's best apparition by the end of the month. It's not going to be outstanding, but it should be visible. In the morning sky, Venus is slowly approaching the sun, getting closer each morning, and it's going around to the other side of the sun, so it looks like it's getting bigger, but the size from our point of view is going to be shrinking. In a couple of months it's going to disappear around the other side of the sun and then come out in the evening again. Here's the typo I was talking about. I adapted this from a previous presentation and forgot to take Mercury out from the morning planets. But along with Venus, we have Ceres, Jupiter, and Saturn. Ceres is probably the highest of the morning planets and should be fairly bright, somewhere up around 7th magnitude. Jupiter should be easily visible. By the time the sun rises, or by the time twilight starts, Saturn should just be coming into view. So your best views are probably going to be with a certain amount of light in the sky, but you'll at least be able to see the rings and some of the, at least Titan. Pluto following Saturn up, but it's not going to be realistically visible by anybody here, possibly with a space telescope, nothing on the ground. In the evening, it's going to be pretty dull. Mars is still up there, but it's getting close to the horizon and it's getting far away. It's only about 6 arc seconds across, so is that right? 6 seconds or 6 minutes? Must be 6 seconds. So it's well past the point where it's going to be an interesting object to look at. If you have a large telescope and a good night, might be able to see the ice caps, but I wouldn't personally count on it. Neptune's into the twilight and really is not a great object. If you have a desire to see it, you could probably spot it, but I don't think you'll see anything useful about it. Uranus is very close to Mars and is over half the size of Mars as far as we're concerned. So it's actually probably the most interesting object in the evening sky for us. You might be able to see some of the moons depending on what the atmospheric conditions are. Maybe. As always, I like to point out a bit of deep sky stuff, especially for the beginners. The winter open clusters are particularly the ones in Auriga, M36, 37, 38 are all nicely clustered and well overhead. M35 in Gemini is very spectacular. And of course, everybody knows the Pleiades, or as I call them when I'm drunk, the Perseids 9 times out of 10. They're good urban targets because obviously they're just composed of stars. Stars are nice concentrated points of light. They get through the crap in the urban atmosphere very well. And I think they're good sketching targets. A lot of people talk about how useful it is to learn how to sketch astronomical objects. I support that. And the thing about clusters is you can draw them without a lot of talent because you're just drawing a lot of dots. All you really have to do is get the positions right. Not the Perseids, the Pleiades, naked object in the city. Perfect for binoculars, wide field telescopes. They look really spectacular with either instrument. You can test your vision under either city or dark skies. You can see how many stars you can see. If you can see any stars in the city, it's good. The more you see, the better. If you're wondering whether you're one of the people with really acute night vision, you can look for more stars than the usual 6. If you're a serious observer, nebulosity is an interesting thing you can look for. It's a tricky one because it depends very much on the cleanliness of your optics. If there are smudges on your eyepieces or there's dust on your corrector plate, you're not going to be sure whether you're seeing the nebulosity or just the crap on your telescope. But if you're interested in a serious project, get your optics ultra clean one night and go out and look for the nebulosity. And on cloudy nights, you can join me in pondering why the 6 stars are called the 7 Sisters. I'm totally baffled, and I've never heard a good explanation. Some people say that one of the stars blew up, but there's no evidence of that. I don't know. And of course, a picture lifted from APOD. This is actually one of the best ones I've ever seen to show off just how much nebulosity there is around those stars and how interesting it would look if you can get a really good picture of it. So comets and meteors, there are no big meteor showers this month, unfortunately. The only meteor shower I could find listed anywhere was the Alpha Centaurids, which you get about 6 meteors an hour between February 2nd and 19th. And most of them are probably going to be below the horizon as far as we're concerned, so it's looking pretty feeble. We do have a bunch of comets showing, at least 5 comets over a 10th magnitude. 46P Virtanen in Ursa Major is the exciting one. That's the one people are talking about all over the internet. I haven't had a successful chance to see it. I've tried it a couple times. Either the city atmosphere is too hazy or the moon is too bright, but it's on my list. I'm going to get there one night. 4 other comets, C2018 Y1 Iwamoto, 38P Stefan Oterma, Atlas 2018 L2, and 64P Swift Girls. Should all be visible from around here. Cygnus, the one in Cygnus, you probably want to get out and observe as early as possible because it sets pretty quick, but it is 10th magnitude. It should be visible to most telescopes anyway. Because I can't let a night go by without a variable star, Delta Cepheii is the one I've picked for this month. It's the original Cepheid variable. It's naked eye brightness, 3.5 to 4.5 magnitude, about 5.5 day period. It's pretty rapid, which means if you're just checking out the brightness by eyeballing it, comparing it to one star, comparing it to another star, you're probably not going to get a good enough observation for to be scientifically useful. You probably want to be getting at it with a photometer or a CCD. But it's a scientifically very interesting star. It's the first stepping stone to the size of the universe. Getting an accurate time for this one is probably it's the first step to figuring out how big the entire universe is. And I will say that professional scientists have been hammering on this one for decades, and you and I are probably not going to change that overnight in our backyards with our telescopes. But every piece of data is a useful piece of data, and in 100 years' time, every observation may be part of a long-term change in the period. So it's worth getting out there and having a look. I hope Blake is watching. I've picked Gamma Andromedae as a double star for this season. The reason I picked it is it's an easy one to see. The primary is quite bright. It's not a hard one to find. The 2 stars are well separated, but the second one is still in in good visual range. The handbook lists double stars and gives that one a rating of 3 exclamation marks for excellent, beautiful color contrast. The real reason I picked it is I know what it's like to do visual observing in the winter. I'm going to assume that you're like me, and unless you have something really serious in mind, you're not going to want to haul out your telescope into the minus 20-degree weather. But on the other hand, hauling out a small telescope or a pair of binoculars for 10 minutes, having a look, and then dashing back inside for a cup of cocoa is a realistic goal. So I've given you a realistic double star to look for. I was reading on spaceweather.com earlier today that we may get some aurora sometime in the next couple nights. This is why the presentation wasn't actually ready last night to be uploaded. I'm actually adding new things all the time. So if it is clear tonight or tomorrow night, head out, take a look, especially up north, see if there's any sign of aurora up there. Like always, aurora predictions are like comet predictions. You're really taking your chances, renting a car and driving north to see it. But if you get a chance for a casual view, it's definitely worth taking a look and seeing if it's there. Spaceflight, it's going to be a busy month. Both Iran and India are launching satellites on their own rockets, which is an expansion of the spaceflight world into a wider field of nations than we've seen before. SpaceX is launching their Crew Dragon capsule, scheduled for maybe February 23rd. It's been postponed 7 or 8 times already, so maybe, but sooner or later it's going to go. Space Israel is sending their lunar lander on a Falcon booster on February 18th. It's just a small lunar lander, just a technology demonstration, but between them and China, it's interesting to see so much activity on the moon again. Until February 11th, the ISS will be passing in the evening, and from February 22nd until the next meeting, there will be morning passes. As always, heavensabove.com is where I go to find my times at any location. We have a plan for Hayabusa 2 to drop within a few feet of the asteroid Ryugu, take a shot at it, and scoop up the debris that bounces up into its collecting horn. So it's scheduled to happen sometime in February. We'll see if it actually happens, but keep an eye out. InSight is scheduled sometime within the next couple of weeks to start drilling a hole in Mars to search for seismic activity. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. And New Horizons is going to continue releasing data that gathered on its pass from MU-69. And that's about it for spaceflight this month, as far as I know. And I think, that's all I've got. So thank you very much.